Okay, so the Bible on business. As I've said already, the Bible has this phenomenal richness of teaching on everything you can think of, but I've discovered there's a lot to say on business, and I want us to look at what we can discover about how to do business God's way. So the core of this is to say the world does business a particular way. And don't get me wrong, many people in business are doing a whole range of things that are godly in terms of how they do business. So not everyone in business is doing business badly. But the prevailing culture is not comprehensively biblically based. But there's a lot of legacy in the way we do business from a time when business was more Christian in the way it was undertaken. And I guess what I feel is happening is we have been moving away from a biblical way of doing things. And I want to turn that ship around and get it back into doing things biblically. And unless some people take leadership, that's not going to happen. So we need people to get in there and show God's way. We're going to start with Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. Okay, so one important thing is that generally the things that are said very early on in a book like the Bible are really, really significant. They lay really important foundational principles. So the book of Genesis, and particularly these early chapters of Genesis, they may only be 3 chapters long, but there is huge amounts of significance contained in those 3 chapters. It sets out the absolute foundations on which the whole of the book is then built, if you like. It sets out the kind of context of man and the kind of role of man. So this particular passage, being the first instruction to man, in the Bible, it remains absolutely foundational, never to be taken away, never to be changed, absolute, always and for all time. This is the primary responsibility of man in the world. And there may be many things we can add to it as the Bible goes on, and it gets more complicated, our responsibilities, as we move through the Bible, but you can't get away from the fact this is the first and only straight away first instruction to mankind. So what is the kind of core responsibility then, if you like, that is contained in this passage? And it's not a hard question. I mean, in a sense, it's there in the passage, but I just want to kind of write these things up as we go. So, what is the kind of primary command? Sorry, to maintain, or yeah, maintain's an interesting one actually. I think that's an interesting word, maintain, if that was what I heard. To work it, yeah. And this version says to care for it. Now that's a really interesting tension between those two things. You know, working something. Now, I can imagine when someone's, again, ploughing's a kind of inappropriate word to use in this place, but I'm going to use the word ploughing. But, you know, certainly in the old days when someone was ploughing a field with an oxen and they were driving the oxen, okay, working that oxen involved violence. It involved a form of kind of sweat and effort for that oxen. If all the oxen did every day of its life, night and day, 24/7, how many days would the oxen live before it fell over and died? Yeah. So in basic terms, if all we did was the work bit, you know, if you want to build your business just by work, good luck. You'll last about a week and then you'll die. Yeah. I mean, you literally, you know, if you just kept working for 7 days without rest, you probably would keel over and die. That oxen will not last. So the tension is absolutely essential. Yes, let's make it work. Let's work the land. Let's work the materials of the earth. Let's add value to them. Let's work, you know, because working a metal, if you fold it and beat it and kind of keep working that metal, it becomes stronger. There's something about working the earth that makes it productive. But if all we do is work it, we will not sustain. And so there's this kind of absolutely essential, and interestingly, those two things combined leads to maintaining, in a sense, you know, or stewarding. So steward the earth is another verse. Some versions will use the word steward the earth. And what I like about work and care is that if you just use the word steward the earth, you possibly miss the subtlety of the tension between working and caring for. Because of course, if you want that oxen to keep ploughing your fields for the next 10 years, you need to feed it. You need to give it time to rest. You need to make sure that it changes with another oxen, or perhaps it ploughs with 2 oxen. in order to kind of share the load. In one sense, it's such an incredibly simple concept, but if we don't grasp that we have to get the balance between production and rest, that tension is then runs throughout the scriptures. Okay, so it's a really difficult challenge when you're trying to launch a business and trying to be productive in the world, to believe that the rest is as important as the work. And no one's going to be so far extreme in that they just work 24/7 every day of the week. But what tends to happen is we just try and exist slightly too far on the work side and not enough on the care side. And we don't care quite enough for ourselves. We don't care quite enough for our families. We don't care quite enough for our workers, etc. And particularly, I would say, for our families, it's very easy to be really busy, and actually our responsibilities to care are bigger than our business. So even if business is one of your ministries, I can assure you, if you're a family person, and we all come from a family, that is not your only ministry. We all have a ministry to our friends and family, to those people around us. So at the absolute heart of this is, yes, a sense of productivity, that God wants us to make this raw earth productive. But I think too many people have taken that as we have a right to take from the earth, and it's there to be taken from. Well, we're now realising, this generation more than any, that you can't do that. If you keep doing that, we're going to run out of earth, literally, in Lesotho. So that, if you like, is a sort of core overarching principle that runs through everything we're going to talk about. How are you doing on the balance between work and care? And are we maintaining that balance?